If your flight crosses an ocean, you'd expect that it's international. And surely if your flight's over 10 hours, you'd assume you're landing in a different country. As nice as that may be, that isn't the case for our flight today. Spanning just over 5,000 miles in roughly 11 hours, Hawaiian Airlines currently operates the longest domestic flight in the United States, even if there's a couple domestic flights in France that beat it overall. For us, however, Hawaiian Airlines offers an elevated product on their longer flights, something I've never tried before, and I'm thrilled to show it to y'all today. Feel free to use the timestamps down below to find what you're looking for. Now we're off to Boston. Welcome to Boston's Terminal E, which houses all their international airlines. Hawaiian uses quite a few international terminals. Just in the videos I've covered with Hawaiian in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and now Boston, all domestic flights, all international terminals. Possibly because they screen for agriculture and tests being brought to or from the islands, similar to international customs, but a bit less official. Or maybe it's just where they could find gates. Perhaps the best part of the terminal is the lineup of flags on the ceiling. They represent the nonstop destinations Boston has served in order in which the destination was added to the country. Being on the East Coast, Boston's positioned well for the European and Caribbean markets, which are able to be reached with narrow bodies, allowing their main airline, JetBlue, to operate these routes amongst all the others. Check-in was easy, as I was the only person in line for the first-class cabin, even if the main cabin line was actually pretty busy as our flight appeared to be sold out, or pretty dang close. Even first class had only one empty seat at check-in that wasn't empty by the time we got in flight. Terminal E had this big addition added recently, which honestly reminds me of Abu Dhabi's Ferrari World from the outside, but inside it hosts a security checkpoint and a little under half the terminal's gates, so we made the walk down there to get through security. 6 a.m. might seem like a slow time, but the early morning Latin America and Caribbean departures are common at this hour, so without TSA pre-check, the line looked fairly long. Then we were into the interior of this newer section of the airport. It's a good-looking terminal with a good selection of restaurants, with one problem. A lot of these restaurants are things like pizza and seafood, things that aren't great for breakfast. The main breakfast option in this part of the airport is this Pete's Coffee, which is a great breakfast, and I had credit on my Pete's app, so that worked out. Although it is the first time I've seen a Pete's at night, which looked like a bar of sorts. As far as lounges in this section, there is a Delta Sky Club, and they're actually building a brand new Delta One lounge, just like the one we covered in New York. What they don't have, however, is a Hawaiian Airlines lounge. Hawaiian doesn't partner with any lounges, and they aren't in any alliance, so Hawaiian Airlines passengers are unable to visit any lounge before their flight, unless they have access some other way, like credit cards or Priority Pass. This is different if you're departing Hawaii, however. If you've watched my Hawaiian 787 video, then you've seen what I'm talking about. Hawaiian Airlines has lounges at many main airports on the islands. And at Honolulu, the only one with long-haul flights, they have an upgraded lounge that actually meets more lounge standards. Anywhere else, and there's no lounge access for you, no matter if you're in business class, no matter how long your flight is. That is honestly one of the biggest issues I have with this product. But if that whole Alaska merger thing goes through, you'd have to assume that it would come with One World lounge access. After a bit of plane spotting, our aircraft was arriving from Honolulu, so I made the journey to my gate to catch a glimpse of the aircraft taxiing in. And it wasn't just a beautiful sunrise on arrival, but the added bonus was that the inbound leg was actually piloted by my friend Dan, who went to college with me and now flies the A330 for Hawaiian Airlines. Kind of funny that we grew up near each other, ended up across the country at school together, now we live thousands of miles apart, and I just happened to run into him as he arrives with my airplane in Boston. As most people know, Hawaiian now has the 787s with updated cabins, but the A330s still do their heavy lifting, flying all their international routes, including some pretty long flights like Sydney and Tokyo, but also New York and Boston. I have covered this product, even if it's been a while, and I know we are all excited to get on board, but first, everyone wave back to Pilot Dan and say, "Hello, Pilot Dan." I'm a sucker for a good carry-on suitcase, but sometimes it's tough to find that balance where it's light enough that you can bring on board, but also the perfect size that it can both fit in the overhead bin and fit whatever you need for your whole trip. Today I'm here to highlight a new suitcase that I found with an excellent upcoming deal from the sponsor of today's video, Level 8. So the suitcase that I chose is from their luminous textured collection, and it's the same bag that I'll have a discount code for you shortly. But to highlight some of the great features of this, it starts off with the low noise wheels, which spin so freely that it pretty much rolls on its own. And that's not even mentioning these TSA locks, the double telescopic handle, making it extra sturdy, the double enclosed pocket inside, which I should mention has plenty of space for my recent 6-day trip, all while using a hard shell plastic to keep it light and enough aluminum to keep it durable. All this while measuring at their 20-inch size and just under 8 pounds or about 4 kilos, while having a lifetime warranty makes this the perfect carry-on to add to your repertoire. But what about that deal I was talking about? This week on October 8th and 9th is Amazon's fall sale, and Level 8 is having a 20% discount on their products. Using the code you'll find down in the description below, you can get an additional 5% off, resulting in a 25% discount on Level 8 Luminous Texture Collection luggage. Great time to go add a new carry-on to your collection. Now back to paradise. Hawaiian has groups for boarding, but there was some passengers who snuck on with the pre-boarders. One dude was convincing his wife to just go and was all cranky about it, and so I'm left curious as to how he'll survive running on island time. No worries though, considering it wasn't long until we were able to board and the cabin was still fairly empty, allowing us to get a good chance to see this 222 cabin. While it's far from the newer products of the times, I do give Hawaiian a pass on this, and I'll tell you why. First, Hawaiian operates a unique market. As one of the world's most common vacation destinations, people are rarely traveling alone, especially business travelers who take their common carriers, meaning that the two seats next to each other allows friends and family to enjoy each other's company. Also, it's not like we don't know what comes next. With the 121 787s, we will see those on their more premium routes as they get more of them delivered. The seat, by the way, is a brown leathery material with minor blue accents. It's wide enough due to there being no large counter space, and there's a slight angle away from the seatmate in case you don't want to talk to them. No counter, but there is a small armrest along the windows, of which there's 3 here since there's many less rows, so each row gets more windows. In front, the seat shell showcases the colors of the cabin with some cutouts for the literature like the safety card, but also some storage underneath that. Not big enough for a backpack, but can hold individual items. The footrest is a bit unique as it's not attached to the seat shell, but instead as its own island, pun intended. It also has a small pocket on the side that really can only hold like a phone or tablet. The fact that it's not attached to the seat shell, however, allows easy access to the aisle, not requiring you to step over your seatmate, so technically, every seat does have direct aisle access. On the console between the seats, first off, is a pocket by the leg, which is the largest storage reachable at the seat, but also has the light and call buttons and USB charging port. Plus, the main seat control, which is this wheel you hold down, similar to United's Polaris recline. There isn't a universal power port here, but it is on the front of the console, one for each person. The top of the console features a few things. For starters, you may notice that there isn't seatback TVs. This is because on A330s, they instead hand out iPads, which sit in this device holder that pops out from the console. There's also a tray table that pops out the same way, except that mine was stuck, and it took myself and 2 crew members wrestling it to finally help it out. Lastly is the privacy partition, which has to be down for taxi, takeoff, and landing, but can be up for the other 9+ hours, and unfortunately, there aren't any overhead air vents. However, it can get a little warm. When it comes to amenities, most routes on Hawaiian are super limited, but these routes are a little bit different story, and I'd love to show it off while indulging on one of their famous Mai Tais. In the meantime, there's the bag of bedding. It includes a much more substantial pillow than on most flights, and a much better comforter as well. But the best part was the mattress pads. Even if it's a little thin, it was placed on the seat before departure and comfortable. We also got our agriculture form. It's basically the same as a customs form, but as a way to screen domestic passengers as well. Lastly was the amenity kits, something you don't typically get on most of their flights. I do like the colors staying on brand, but the contents are pretty basic, except that at the bottom of the menu is the additional items available on request. No worries for those more socially anxious people, you don't have to ask them. They actually came past with a nice box of amenities and you can grab whatever you'd like. We were even encouraged to try one of everything, so you don't feel too much like a kid on Halloween getting too much candy from your neighbor's bowl. So this flight might be long, at roughly 11 hours and 5,000 miles, but it's still only the fourth longest domestic flight in the world. Granted, the others deal more with territories than states or provinces, but number one is Paris Charles de Gaulle to Réunion, the flight operated by Air France and Air Astral, and beating this route by roughly 800 miles. Réunion's existence actually changes the whole list, considering that the second longest is Paris Orly to Réunion, followed by Marseille to Réunion, and then is the Boston to Honolulu route. So essentially, without the existence of Réunion, this flight would be the longest domestic flight in the world, which, by the way, will also be operated soon by Delta as well. Hawaiian is one of the few carriers on the list of longest domestic flights to use the A330, however. The majority of airlines on those aforementioned routes have 777s or 787s, and while Hawaiian does have 787s, they've yet to see the US East Coast. Interestingly enough, looking at available seat miles, Boston doesn't even crack the top 5 for the airline. We see Tokyo at number 1, followed by Los Angeles, then Vegas, then New York, and Osaka. Those are most likely the places we'll find the 787, and actually at the moment, LA and Vegas do see the aircraft pretty regularly. As mentioned in my April video covering Hawaiian's first ever 787 flight, they do plan to continue using the A330 as it's been a real workhorse on their less premium routes. As a matter of fact, since the A330's launch in the 90s, it has become one of Airbus's anchors in the wide-body long-haul game, especially in the US. There's 4 variants, 2 CEOs and 2 NEOs, each generation with a longer range model and a higher capacity model. Hawaiian uses the A330-200, which is the lower capacity but longer range version of the legacy era A330s. This A330s replaced their aging 767s, and now will be partially replaced at least by their 787s. But Hawaiian still remains one of the US's most frequent A330s, with the top 5 being Azul Brazilian Airlines, Aer Lingus, Iberia, Delta, and Hawaiian in first place with roughly 1,200 monthly A330 flights, over double Delta's numbers in second place, according to an article from Simple Flying. Hawaiian Airlines is in a bit of a strange spot, however. They do operate a niche market of leisure travelers, and their product has largely reflected that. Recently, with the 787, they seem to be becoming a bit more premium, which will be interesting to see operating on their more premium routes, but for the most part, I don't hate what they do with the A330. It's a manageable 222 cabin, and if we're being honest, not many people are flying to Hawaii by themselves, so you're usually sitting next to a friend or family member anyway. Shortly after departure, they came past with an iPad and over-ear headphones. As mentioned, the iPads are used on the A330s and A321neos, but they have installed seatback screens on the 787s, which signals a better future. Unfortunately, the selection is fairly limited on the iPads, as I've come to learn it never hurts to have a few things downloaded to your own device just in case. But the normal categories of movies, each with a few titles. The TV shows are even more limited, and the shows they do have only have a few episodes and not full seasons. There's also, unfortunately, no in-flight map. As mentioned, this is fixed with the new aircraft, which have the latest technology and more content available. Lastly is the Wi-Fi. On my previous 2 Hawaiian videos, we've talked about Hawaiian's lack of Wi-Fi on their planes. This isn't always the case, however, as Hawaiian has a select group of aircraft where they've added Starlink Wi-Fi to the aircraft. As of September 6th, all A330s except for 7 unapproved leased aircraft and 1 owned aircraft have been fitted with the Starlink Wi-Fi, as August and September were big months for Hawaiian's A330s. After connecting, it took me to their portal, which is normal, but then I couldn't find out how to purchase the Wi-Fi. This is because the Wi-Fi is 100% free. Not only that, but check out these speeds. I haven't seen anything even close to this in all my travels. I mean, I was streaming Netflix on my phone and responding to YouTube comments on my laptop, all with 0 buffering for 0 cost. We did get the menu that lay out the dining options for the flight. Hawaiian Airlines has always had much better food than the other US mainline carriers in my opinion, but this is the first Hawaiian flight I've done that will have 2 meal services, a breakfast after departure and a lunch before arrival. The menu also charts the beverages available, including their specific drinks from the islands, like the Kohana rum and Maui Brewing Company beers. Eventually, they did bring out the tablecloths after another MMA match with my tray table to get it out. You can also see just how it fits here with that tablet holder beyond it. Our breakfast service started with a bowl of macadamia nuts and choice of beverage, for which I got another coffee. Hawaiian does their meal services as a 1-tray service. Yeah, I can hear the judgment, but the content on the tray is better than most. The breakfast on airplanes does lack character typically, so even while this ain't bad, stand by for lunch. For breakfast though, I got the broccoli, mushroom, and cheese frittata, alongside a warm yuzu pound cake and a fruit plate, and warm croissant. Not only that, but there is the engraved silverware, and the salt and pepper inside the folded Hawaiian shirt. As far as airplane breakfasts go, can't get much better than this. Then I wanted to get a little sleep since it was a min rest kind of night before getting on board. First off, the mattress pad was still there from before departure, so we just had to lay it flat with the wheel. You can see that once flat, it is kind of private with your head being surrounded by the seat shell. The little space between the seat and the armrest is also padded, which makes the bed just a little bit wider. It's also a bit odd that it doesn't fully meet the footrest. Then the pillow, which I folded in half to add a bit more volume to it, and then the comforter. It's got a fun Hawaiian pattern on it and it's large enough to cover the whole surface, much better than their West Coast bedding. The benefit of this setup is that there's nothing above the footrest, so you've got space to move your feet even if the surface is a bit narrow. But you can sleep on your side fairly easily with the lack of counter pressing against you. It also is fairly private honestly, even with a seatmate. I feel that with the privacy partition, it's just as private as the 1-2-1 setups, possibly more so if you're in the window seat. And lastly, the biggest part of concern of a seatmate when they're sleeping. We mentioned that it's plenty private, and with the pathway around the back of the footrest, you can get to the lavatory without waking them up or trying to step over them. After a few hours of sleep, I had to go use the restroom, which was also a good time to find some snacks. In the front galley was a cart with crackers, cookies, chips, water, wine, whatever you need. I grabbed a couple things that kept me satisfied waiting for the pre-arrival meal. Then the lavatory, which does have some uniqueness to it, starting with the tile-like print on the floor. The sink area is the super basic A330 setup, but with a few bonus amenities, and then once we got in flight they also added some nice decor. Not as common anymore that we see efforts like this from airlines or the crews, so a big time shout out to Hawaiian's flight attendants. The cabin, when dark, also had some fun touches, like the mood lighting in their typical colors, and the fake stars lighting up the aft bulkhead. A bit curious why they didn't add those lights anywhere else in the cabin, to the front bulkhead or even the ceiling. Unfortunately, they came through the cabin just as the lights came up to collect our entertainment. No more headset, no more iPad. Gonna have to be creative for the last hour or so. They then came by with the tablecloth and some light was brought into the cabin signaling our lunch service before landing in Honolulu. I decided to try their Mowing Brewing Lager with this meal, and while they still use the one-tray service for lunch, the meals designed by chefs Wade and Michelle Wiyuka are still some of the best. For this lunch service, I chose the panzanella salad to accompany the main star of the dish, Korean barbecue-style chicken. Absolutely delicious, and it comes with kimchi fried rice. Bing, bang, boom, Hawaiian has proven once again that they have some of America's strongest catering. We have discussed the elephant in the room in recent videos. That elephant, by the way, that Hawaiian Airlines will likely cease to exist soon. I should say that the company might go away, but the airline looks to be sticking around for years to come. For those of you who aren't as in the loop with US airline news, Alaska Airlines has been working on their merger with Hawaiian Airlines. In my last Alaska Airlines video, we discussed that it had passed the Department of Justice's review stage, which is a major hurdle that most airlines can't get past, although it now faces resistance from United Airlines. While we wait for more news, we do have some rumors on what the merged carriers would look like. For starters, Alaska has been adamant that the Hawaiian brand will stick around independently from Alaska, just ran by the Alaska Airlines group. The two airlines just have too much history and brand recognition in their respective markets. I picture it working similar to IAG with British Airways and Iberia. There is also the interesting predicament of the overlapping routes that Alaska and Hawaiian have. To be fair, it is only 12 routes, but it's some of Alaska's most profitable routes from California, Washington, and Oregon to 4 of Hawaii's islands. The prediction is that we see a 2-to-1 reduction in these routes, but personally, I see Alaska pulling out of most West Coast to Hawaii routes, except for their hubs. San Jose to Honolulu, for example, probably getting pulled. The Hawaiian brand would continue operating these routes to keep their stake in the competition, but Alaska could reassign these aircraft and expand their Seattle and San Francisco operations, something they've been trying to do recently. Hawaiian also serves some major global One World hubs like Tokyo, Sydney, and Los Angeles, and with Hawaiian joining Alaska, it would seemingly become a One World airline, allowing for much easier connections in these hubs. Lastly, Hawaiians are understandably nervous about losing their identity in an airline. Alaska has spoken on this, assuring 4 main things. First, they've stated that the Hawaiian brand in Pualani will be retained. Although, it should be noted that when they said the same thing about Virgin America's brand, they erased it faster than I've ever seen before. They've also stated that protecting jobs on the islands is important to them, since many Hawaiians rely on employment at their flagship airline as ground or in-flight staff. The inter-island routes are also important to Hawaii's culture, and Southwest has been throwing a major wrench in the gears of that operation, which Alaska has said they will help to maintain Hawaiian's stake in those routes. And lastly, Hawaiian Airlines is deeply invested in the community. I mean, look at the tragic fires in Maui that happened. Hawaiian was quick to transport people and supplies with ease, and Alaska hopes to maintain that same level of community involvement. With lots of unknowns, the future is still up in the air, even if plenty of people are left anxious to know what comes next. Personally, I love Hawaiian's brand. It's like your tropical vacation starts before you even get to the islands. In the winter, you could be in a New England blizzard, and an hour later be sipping a Mai Tai listening to Kolohe Kai. I do like their evolution where we see a nice split of premium aircraft and leisure aircraft, with the cabins reflecting that, and always with local touches from the islands. I know Alaska has said they'll maintain those touches, but Hawaiian is more culture rooted than possibly any other carrier, and we all love it for that. So as far as their product goes, starting with the ground product, check-in and security is a breeze typically. The lack of lounge spaces is a major point against them. Now, if you're departing from Hawaii, you do have lounges, although if you've watched my 787 video, you know that the majority of routes only get access to a small room without any food as their pre-departure lounge experience. If you are on one of their long-haul routes, however, either international, American Samoa, or the East Coast, you do get an upgraded lounge in Honolulu only. This lounge is definitely more up to standards, with full food and beverages, an assortment of lounging spaces, even if you don't have showers. I do wish they could work something out with other carriers in their other locations, especially for these long-haul flights to Hawaii. But I guess if that Alaska merger goes through, there's a strong possibility of One World Partner Lounge access. On board, I know y'all will come at me for the airline's 222 setup, but hear me out. First off, they do have a pathway for aisle access without that weird straddle over your seatmate, kind of like the Apex suites of Gulf Air and Japan Airlines, but maybe not quite as nice. Also mentioned, they are a leisure carrier. In the end of the day, their passengers largely travel with others, so sharing a space is totally okay with me, especially because I like talking to the people I travel with, but also like looking out the window. Their soft product may be one of the best in the game, actually. I find they have a great selection of drinks, including, of course, the Mai Tai and Pog. Food-wise, possibly some of the best food in the US. I know it's a low bar, but I have always enjoyed my meals with Hawaiian Airlines in both first class and economy. Not to mention it just gives them another excellent way to connect with their culture. I've previously criticized their lack of amenities on the routes between Hawaii and the West Coast, so it's great to know that at least on these long routes, you do get much more substantial bedding and an excellent spread of amenities in your kit. Honestly, it feels like Hawaiian almost has two separate airlines, one that flies to the West Coast and one that does long haul. That's how much more I appreciated this service, and I hope that Alaska's financial aid will only make this better. Let me know your thoughts on it, however. Mahalo to you all, my ohana, and until next Sunday, safe travels. I'll see y'all next time.